I want to bring in Sir Bill Cash right now, a Conservative member of Parliament who is in favor of Britain exiting the EU. Sir, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Very nice to speak to you.
What's your next move now that we know the UK has voted? When do these new trade deals begin to get made?
Well, first of all, we want to take things in an orderly and stable manner. And we're already putting out overtures to the other member states. I'm chairman of the equivalent of the European Congressional Committee. I'm the chairman of the House of Commons European Scrutiny Committee, and where I'm already talking to other chairmen of other national parliamentary committees about the process. And in addition to that, I think it's important to note that in relation to the single market, which everyone says is so vital, the fact is that as it is now currently constructed, all the trade policy is made by the European Union, and we don't make our own. Imagine, for example, in the United States, if you had to be governed by 3 or 4 other countries, or that your Supreme Court was actually overridden by another Supreme Court. That's the position that we've been in.
Yeah.
And in the single market, let's explain this. We run a trade deficit with the other 27 member states of £61 billion a year, whereas we make in goods and services, whereas we make a surplus with the rest of the world of 31 billion. It grew by 10 billion last year alone. Germany, on the other hand, runs a trade surplus with the 27 member states of 81 billion. So you can see it's not really a single market which benefits us. It benefits Germany, but not us. So we want to be able to do our own deals with other people. For example, Switzerland has just done a deal with India. The EU can't do one with India. It hasn't been able to achieve it. So there are all kinds of reasons why, in economic and in other terms, it's essential for us to have regain our own independence. And I fought for this for 30 years,
right.
And I led the rebellion against John Major in the 1990s over this as well. And we've now got the referendum, and we've now won it.
I think you make a really good point, and I'm glad you brought up the single market, because that's the point here. 500 million people throughout the Eurozone. What you're saying is you think that the UK can still reach those people with new trade deals that will benefit the UK, because your current trade situation doesn't benefit the UK at all.
That's absolutely right. You've got it in one. And actually, it doesn't benefit us, but in the same way that it could, we will continue to trade with Europe and the European Union. Indeed, the German chief executive of the German Trade Federation said, of course, we want to continue to trade. And that is the beginning of a stabilization process. There's been a lot of talk about Armageddon and all the different organizations like the OECD and so on saying the whole of the British economy wouldn't work. It will.
Very practical points you're making. I want to bring in Simon Constable here from the Wall Street Journal, sir. Listen to this.
Bill, when Britain was at its relative richest in the world, we had no tariffs. Right? I'm from Britain. I grew up. I know the history of it. Does Britain get back to a point where we take all the tariffs away from any of our trading partners and we just say, look, that's it. Britain gets cheaper goods coming in. We become back to the glory days of the 19th century?
Well, you know something? You mentioned the 19th century, and funnily enough, my great-grandfather's cousin, John Bright, was Abraham Lincoln's mentor during the Civil War. And in fact, just to tell you briefly, the only picture in Abraham Lincoln's reception room was of John Bright. And I'm telling you, this was free trade in a proper sense. It's proper, free and fair trade. What's been happening is that we've been absorbed into a system which doesn't actually work effectively for us, for the reasons I've already given. And you don't have to be a member of the EU to trade with it. And the Swiss, as I've said, have actually entered into a very good deal with India very recently.
Interesting.